Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another episode of In the Prog Seat. It's Tuesday night. We're talking prog. It's another album study evening. But before we get started on that with the album in question today, let me introduce the crew. Chad Hutchinson's in the house. George Lemay is here. Professor of Prog Ken Golden is here. And Eric Porter's here. We hope to have Louis Nasser. We hope. He's a little tardy, but hopefully he'll join in progress. And we're not sure where Chuck Alvarez is. Chris Canzaneri will be out tonight. He's getting a medical procedure done in a couple weeks, so he's going to be out for a few weeks, but he'll be doing fine. We'll see him probably in early May, and I believe also Anthony will be coming back in early May. He's got late working hours with his new job. So, but you got the five of us right now, and the album in question today. This is going to be a fun one. Tales from Topographic Oceans by Yes, picked by Mr. Golden himself. And as we always do with these episodes, the person who picked the album gets to host the show. So let me turn it over to Ken for this double album from 1973.
So, one thing I want to tell everybody that I've now renamed this album. It is now called Tales from Typographic Terrors. I tried reading it, the font. It is absolutely unreadable. It's like italic. It's like italic, all caps,
Mhm.
and it's my eyes. So I tried reading the lyrics. Not that it would be comprehensible anyway, but
Well, as incomprehensible as that is, I'm trying to read the CD booklet, and
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
yeah.
impossible.
I mean, you can read it, but it's small. I
oh
mean,
yeah, I mean
really,
it's
I would
tiny.
struggle to read the whole thing.
Uh, I'll give. I don't want to sound like Wikipedia. Yeah, I don't want to sound like Wikipedia, but I'll give a little bit of a overview of what the album is. So I'll give you kind of like the super condensed version. So, Tales from Topographic Oceans came out, I believe, 1974. The origins of it, John Anderson was introduced to a book, Autobiography of a Yogi by Paramahansa Yogananda. Jamie Muir, when he was in King Crimson, was the person that introduced John Anderson to it. And this is actually, a lot of this is actually in I guess it's in the CD as well. It's part of the, John Anderson recounts how, you know, the origins of the album. So there was a footnote in the book, in this bio, that caught his attention. It outlined four shastras, which are basically rules governing religious and social life. So he got Steve Howe interested, and the two of them went down the rabbit hole. And they decided that they were going to make an album around it. And the band was on tour, and they were working on it till like all hours of the night while in hotel rooms writing this stuff. So they envisioned it as being an album in four parts. They had too much material for a single album and not enough for a double. So they had a choice, and the band decided that they would expand it into a double. And they worked on the album for 5 months. The resulting album was originally supposed to be called Tales from Topographic Oceans, but Nishui Erdogan, Ahmet's brother, had them change it to Topographic Oceans. And it's been, ever since it came out, it's been a very controversial album. The band toured the album. Initially, they played all four parts of it, I think, followed by Close to the Edge. And the tour overlapped with the release of the album, so the reaction was very poor. Uh, the audience didn't have any time to digest the material, and they came out doing these, four side-long pieces, and eventually they cut it down where they were just on that tour where they were just doing two parts of the album. Wakeman was not happy with the album. He felt that there was a lot of padding in the material, and at the end of the tour, he left. He went off, started his solo career, and he had a big hit with Journey to the Center of the Earth. So it's still a very controversial album. Some people consider it to be the band's masterpiece, and others think it was just like this act of ego massaging hubris. Uh, for me, I'll give you my impressions, and then we could fight it out. I find it to be sort of like an imperfect masterpiece. The whole concept is very bizarre. It's very esoteric, and having four full length sides makes it really tough to listen to in one sitting. I mean, I probably haven't listened to this album in one sitting since I was like 18. Uh, it features some of their most memorable music, but it does feel padded in spots. And it's kind of funny because the parts that we think are padded are probably not the parts that like Wakeman thinks are padded, because Wakeman knows the parts that are padded. Apparently, like one piece was originally like 8 minutes long. I don't know if I think it might have been Revealing Science of God. So, also Johnny Anderson's lyrics, they're absolutely impenetrable. I have no idea what the fuck he's talking about. I still don't even understand what Total Mass Retain is. So, you know, this album is just four sides of incomprehensible gibberish to me. But the sounds that he comes up with, they're beautiful in places. So I just find that the best way to digest Tales of Topographic Oceans is in like multiple sittings. And also, I felt that everybody's individually, the contributions were great. I thought while Wakeman didn't really care for the album all that much, his mellotron is all over this album. I think his spots, his synthesizer solos are just killing. Steve Howe, I find his playing is like a foreshadowing of Relayer. Squire seems like a little bit in the background for the most part, but every so often he does something that's very Squire-like, like on the Ancient. He really comes alive on the Ritual. On Ritual, uh, I thought that the Ancient was an interesting piece because Anderson shuts his pie hole for a lot of it. There's a lot of instrumental parts. Howe's classical acoustic guitar in the second part is really beautiful. Alan White acquits himself well, but he probably was asking himself, "What the hell did I get myself into?" And I kind of like that Steve Howe quotes from previous works. He throws in a melody line from Close to the Edge on Ritual. I thought that was kind of cool. My favorite is Revealing Science of God. That's my favorite side. And for me, it's as good as Close to the Edge and Gates of Delirium for a big epic piece. And I thought the Ancient the Ritual close behind. For me, they were remembering side two. That was the weak point of the album. And I think my basic sense is that if as Wakeman says now, if it had been conceived in the CD age and it would have been a 60-minute piece of music condensed down to 60 minutes, it would have been their best album. So I decided to post about this album as I'm listening to it. I posted on Facebook and Instagram, and I said, "Masterpiece or madness? What is it?" And I got a lot of comments, and it was overwhelmingly positive, but there were a number of negatives. But I mean, this is an album that really stirs people. So Mark Hudson said, "Masterpiece with perhaps a hint of madness. Nobody else was doing what they did," and I think that's kind of true. Ian Cars, Mr. Henry Cow, he shocked Anthony Ferraro. He said masterpiece. That was kind of shocking,
Yeah.
right? And well, I have some other quotes here, but I have to say, so I'm going to start with George. I'm going to say, George, what happened to this song we once knew so well? I
You
must have
know,
waited all my life for this, so tell me.
I haven't had a lot of contact with this album through the years. I never owned it, so I never liked or disliked it. I just you hear so much about it, and it just feels like it's something you could probably do without. But as I'm listening to this, well, let me take it song by song. The Revealing Science of God. Uh, it takes a few minutes to kick in, but I do like this one mostly. Even many of the supporters of this album would concede that it's kind of a parts album. A lot of people say parts, and I think that's very true of this song. Parts of it are really good, but I don't know that the arrangement hangs together as good as the other, like you said, Close to the Edge and Gates of Delirium. Maybe it does, and I just don't have enough time with it. But that was my impression of the opening song. On balance, I do like it, so that's one plus. The remembering for me, largely uneventful. Like the first half of it, really struggling to get going.
not much meat on the bone at all. It kind of sounds like a mishmash of the ballady parts of a lot of their other albums. Not a bad tune, but not going to be my favorite anytime. The Ancient, this song I dislike. It starts off with that cool keyboard line, and then Howe just comes in and shits the bed, in my opinion. A lot of just wanky slides, and I don't know what he's doing, but it's incoherent to me. It's irritating. This song I don't want to revisit again. This is
You
the
know,
one.
George, he plays a lot of pedal steel, traditionally.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, you know what? That's what it sounds like. Yeah, for me, this song is a skipper forever. Ritual, I think, is another pretty solid tune. Uh, some nice melodies from John, like you said. John has got some real highlights on this album, some real earworm melodies, just real pretty stuff. But again, the arranging could be a little better, I think. And I could do without the drums and percussion solo. It's like 3 minutes that I would just as soon they get to where they were going without. Um, I agree with everyone that the album feels padded to me. And when the problem with this is template songwriting. When you're setting out to do four epics, there's going to be a point where you don't have 20 minutes and you're trying to get to 20 minutes. And I don't think that's good for the process myself. Um, I I would like to ask everybody if you maybe at the end or maybe now, do you think this album is better served if it's a single album with your two favorite songs? That's it. One on one side, one on the other, like thick as a brick. Because to me, it absolutely is. I would have Revealing Science of God and Ritual, single album. Maybe you want to put the good parts of the other songs in there. I don't know.
Well,
Well,
But
that,
I'd even say, George, like if Wakeman's quote was boil it down to 60 minutes, how about boiling it down to 40 minutes?
that's what I'm saying. A single
You
with
know,
two epics instead of
yep. I
the way
mean,
they did it.
well, that was the crossroads they were at. But I think that this was a band, you know, they were really riding on a lot of success. And I think these guys had a huge ego at that point, and
Yeah,
they felt they could have done whatever they wanted to do, and they came up with this crazy concept. And not only was it a crazy concept, let's make it a double. I mean,
yeah,
let's
but
really
Ken, why not? The record company took it and put it out. Record company
sure.
could have said, we're not putting this out. So I don't blame them for what give it a shot, whether it worked or not.
Yeah,
Once
I mean,
it's
the
out of their
template for this
hands, it's
was
in our
close to
hands, I
the edge
guess.
was the template, and that did very well. So
Right.
the record company
Well,
was probably
Right.
like, "Hey, go for it. We'll
You know,
trust you guys
I think
to
one
do
thing
the
that
thing."
hurt. I think one thing that hurt them is the obviously Wakeman was disenchanted by what was going on, and he was also working on material for his own next project,
yeah,
the Journey to
sure.
the Center of the Earth, and so he wasn't invested in the Yes sessions as much. If he had taken all his energies, maybe some of that material, and was involved more in the writing and the arranging, it could have been a lot tighter of an album.
Well, Squire also, Squire. I mean, I think all the writing was Anderson and Howe.
Yeah.
Pretty
Yeah.
Did you see
much.
the
Pretty
Yes
much.
Who
Years
knows?
doc?
They might not want to have heard. They didn't.
You know,
Maybe
if
they didn't want to hear from everybody else.
if I could just go off on a tangent for a second, one thing that makes me a little sad is over the years, you always saw that when Anderson and Howe got together, they always came up with great songs. And the fact that Anderson, who can still sing, is not a member of Yes now. I mean, there's still the potential for something genuine to happen, and it makes me sad. So
What what you're saying about ego is totally true, though. If you see the Yes Years documentary, there's a spot where Anderson's talking about this album, and he says that he read a review where someone's like, "Yes is going to put the Bible to music," and he's like, "Damn right we will."
right.
Uh, that is it. That is
Oh
the
yeah.
just
Forgot about that
trying
quote.
to prove something.
Oh, absolutely. So yeah. Uh, it yeah. I mean, even I don't think anybody could who love. I all my friends love this album. When I said we were doing this, oh, it's the greatest. It's the best Yes album. It's a masterpiece. And what's it about? I don't know. It's great. So
Yeah, Lewis never considers that when he's honest to take more account of lyrics. He never considers when they're bad. It can take an album down for you in your head. Like, this is so
well, yeah.
stupid.
The thing is with Anderson, it was my interpretation with him. Now I like his voice, is that it was always about the sound as opposed to the words. So I'm sure these words, the lyrics have intense meaning for him, but for the casual listener, uh, I think they're lost. I don't think anybody. I don't care how much pot I could have smoked. I don't think I would have. I don't think I would have had a deeper meaning. So, I will ask Chad, what happened to the wonders we once knew so well?
Well, I think, like we've been saying, they got lost in their own ocean, really. Um, as a whole, I feel the whole thing is too long. It does feel padded. It's definitely indulgent. I think there's parts where are misguided, but there's a ton of potential in here for this to have been a true masterpiece. Um, I felt um, sort of on a whole that maybe it's production wise or maybe it's the arrangement. Wasn't as much punch to things as there were on the Close to the Edge album, or even Relayer, or even things like Heart of the Sunrise. They'd come to big changes or big crescendos, and it would sort of be like they're rounded off. I had a good example of it. Let's see if I surely can't find it now. Um,
No, there he is.
but there's one really there's one line I called out, and of course I can't find it in my notes now, that it was just prime for the big yes crescendo and all the instrumentation and all this stuff. And even revealing Science of God, which I agree, I think is probably my favorite of the four on there. Um, the second time John Anderson sings "Glory to Sons," it kind of just fizzles. It's not like this big orchestral moment where it could have been very dramatic, and they let it go. And I feel that happens on a lot of these songs. I don't feel there's as much urgency in John's voice as in other Yes epics or other Yes music. They just, it's a little dry. It's not as dramatic, and I don't get as much of that excitement out of these songs as a whole because of that.
Do
Um,
you think, Chad? Do you think it's because each piece is so sprawling and so big, and that had
well,
been more
yes,
if
and
the
well,
songs were shorter?
part of it could be, but there are still. I mean, we have things like Close to the Edge that have the multiple parts, even on the back of the sleeve, right? These songs still have multiple parts. They transition to different parts throughout. All four of them do, but the transitions from one part to the next aren't nearly as dramatic or as punchy as I think that they should or could have been, based on not only history with this band, but where they went. And you look at the Relayer album, at least the first two songs, that's full of energy and punch. So they got it back. They know it's there. But I felt like everything, all the sharp edges, besides Steve Howe's guitar in the Ancient, were rounded off, and it doesn't quite have that punch. Um, like I said, "Revealing Science of God," I think is probably the best song on here. Um, that holds together, I think, the best as a Yes epic. Uh, the Revealing Science of God I'm sorry, the Remembering, I find to be a little plotty. Um, it's missing that punchiness. Um, but there's one part in there that I think, and I want to get back to George's question from before. The part where the chorus of it is Relayer. It's real upbeat. There's a great bass line. That's a really great part of the song. Um, Now, the Ancient, I agree with George that is my least favorite on here. I think the first half of it is full of meandering, sharp, strange guitar. I love Steve Howe, but man, I just have a hard time listening to a lot of the soloing he does on this. I don't find the first two-thirds of this to be very memorable. Personally, I like what the single edit did. They cut out the first 14 minutes and put out Leaves of Green as a single. And even Leaves of Green on the Ancient probably goes on one stanza too long. But as a song, I think Leaves of Green is good. It's almost a little bit of a cousin to Wondrous Stories in a way. But I don't like a lot of the Ancient. Ritual, I think it starts off great. It does have that. Has that Yes Epic feel to it. The Nous sommes du Soleil part is beautiful. It's one of the better melodies in Yes music in their catalog. Um, there's a great bass solo that, like you said, Ken, that Chris Squire really comes alive in this song. And near the end, he's putting down a nasty solo. And then they could take that and segue back into Nous sommes du Soleil and finish the song and make it a nice 15-minute epic. But they had to go do 3 minutes of drums for really no reason and no lyrical buildup. Like, hey, it's wartime. Like
Well,
Delirium did.
Alan White going to do? Everybody got their solo spot. Alan White had to get his.
Apparently, he wrote some melodies on some of the other songs, like on piano and guitar. But I heard this part is amazing live. I guess I've seen it live in later renditions, not this tour, obviously, since I was 2. But I just don't think it was necessary. If they went back into Nous sommes du Soleil at the end of the bass solo and closed it out with that, it would have been a much better song. So I think Ritual's a great song with a little marred at the end with the drums. I wish there was a little more Chris Squire on here. I don't hear as much of his counter melody bass playing, and you don't hear as much of his voice. I feel like the vocal mix is very, very John heavy. You don't hear the other two as much. I mean, as a full chorus, they're all there, but on other Yes music, you can kind of pick out Steve and Chris Squire in the background. Not so much on this. So do I love the album? No. Do I hate the album? Also no. You got to be in the mood to listen to it. Like you said, the best way is in chunks. I had to do this in chunks. I think I went through it 3 or 4 times actually, and each one was one song at a time. So, Tales, not a masterpiece, but it had the potential.
Can everybody see Luis's blood pressure just rising? I'm going to have Luis go last intentionally because I want to see if by then his head just explodes. You know, if the screen will just be splattered in blood.
From the hospital, you got nothing on me.
So, Pete, you always go last. You want to go last, or you want to go now?
I can go now. I don't want to take too much time. I'd rather let everybody else talk, but yeah, I can go now. Do you have a specific question for me, or just want my kind of?
Well, so Terry Klaus, bass player from Somnambulist, also part-time and way back when in Glass Hammer, his quote was, "There are Yes albums I love more. However, this one packs its own proprietary punch and an existential voyage exotique. Beautiful, extremely passionate, and otherworldly, much like Elias the Sunhillow." Look at Luis.
Wow, double quote for Luis.
What the fuck is that guy smoking?
Yeah, I drink this.
You know, if you smoke toenails, at least take off the fucking polish first.
There you go.
What the
fuck? I drink this one in much differently than the rest. Verdict, masterpiece. What do you say, Pete?
All right, so I've had a long, curious relationship with this album. I will say though, one of my favorite Roger Dean pieces of art, though, the cover. I just absolutely love the artwork. I've always liked this album. I never loved it. And I will say, before we decided we were going to do this particular album for today's episode, I probably haven't heard Topographic Oceans in its entirety in maybe a decade, at least. So it was interesting to kind of revisit this album and really listen to it from start to finish a few times, but do it with like a more of an analytical approach as opposed to just kind of putting it on and having it in the background. And it's almost like I was listening to this in a different way for the very, very first time.
It's hard. It's hard to listen to this analytically because it's easy to pick on it.
Yeah, you really 100%, Chad. I found, kind of like you guys were already saying, I had to kind of listen to it side to side. and really as I'm listening to each piece, kind of think about things. And then once it's done, say, okay, what did I just experience for 20 minutes, right? You're looking at your watch or you look at your phone, whatever the hell. And I found like with every single piece of this album, so there's 4 pieces in total, I probably really, really like 8 to 10 minutes of every 20-minute piece. And I find that there's brilliant moments in every single piece. Well, maybe one, not so much, but like the Revealing Science of God, to me, is the strongest track in total. But even that is not perfect because it takes a little bit to get going. Then it really gets going and it's great. Then, like at the 10 or 12-minute mark, it starts to meander and they throw in, like, to me, this is like Howe and Anderson's Ego album. This is them saying, all right, we're going to kind of take control of this whole thing. It's their album because
Yeah.
When Wakeman plays on here, he's brilliant. But like the first like 8 minutes of the Revealing Science of God, he's like playing all this little bullshit that like, what is he doing? Is he doing anything? And then he comes in and he delivers like a jaw-dropping Moog solo, and you're like, oh, there he is. And then he disappears again for like 5 minutes of the clip. But there are like vocal lines and harmonies and this really good guitar playing on this album when Steve kind of focuses. But I think the Revealing Science of God, to me, probably like 60% of it works really, really well. And I think if they trim that down to a 10-minute track, that's one of the great Yes songs right there. But as it is, maybe not quite. The Remembering, I think, is not quite as successful as that. But again, there are some moments that I think work really, really well. I think John's vocals on this album are very, very good. Like I said, Steve's guitar playing is great, but he's overplaying a lot of this stuff. And again, I don't love his tone. I think, it's
Yes.
certain parts it's okay, but I've always really had a problem with Steve Howe's guitar tone on most of these albums. A couple of, we talked about Drama recently. I think he sounds great on Drama. I think he sounds better on this album maybe than others, but still it's too noodly. The Ancient, what is up with that pedal steel caterwauling? It's just like, shut up. And in the beginning, it's like it's got the and you're like, okay, this is kind of cool, right? It's kind of funky fusion. And then he comes in and he never stops. And you're like, oh my God. And every time he comes in with the pedal steel, ruins it for me. And I'm like, is this the same guy who did all that great pedal steel on the album before? Right. And I'm just like, ugh. Ritual, however, kind of like the Revealing Science of God, has lots of great moments in it. But again, what is it? It's 21 minutes long. Way too long. I think to go back to George's question. So this album is how long? Way long.
84 minutes.
Yeah.
80 something.
Yeah. I think if you trim every track on here, like I said, the Revealing Science of God would make a good 10 to 12-minute track. The Remembering, maybe the same. The Ancient, 5. Ritual, 13. I'll give it that. You got a pretty packed single album right there that I think contains some great music.
I agree with that, Pete. I meant to go back and give a summary like that at the end of what I was saying. I agree with that. I might give it Revealing Science of God a few more minutes, but I agree wholeheartedly with the amounts you just said.
It's just, Ken mentioned padding at the beginning. There's way too much of it. It's almost like they said, well, you said it correctly, Ken, right at the beginning. We have too much for a single album, but not enough for a double album. But we really want to do a double album. So let's do it. Well, everything that they added probably to make it a double album doesn't need to be there. So for me, if they would have said it's too long for a single album, let's trim some of the fat and we have a drop dead classic here. So with all that being said, I like this album. I don't love it because of the final product the way it is. I think there's just too much here that I don't care about. But what I do like on here, I like a lot. I just wish, man, if I could like re-edit this album, doing everything that I just said, I think you got a classic here. You got like a 50-minute classic. But it's just way too much.
Would it be their best album?
I don't know if it would be their best album, Ken, but it would rank way higher than I would rank it now.
Yeah, that main theme to Revealing Science of God is great.
Yep.
Awesome.
I actually, it's funny because I like the beginning of the Ancient. I think that's really, I thought it was really cool. I mean, the pedal steel, wears it down after a bit, but the beginning of it, I thought it was very interesting. And there are aspects of this album overall where it's kind of very un-Yes like. It doesn't. They're trying different sounds. They're taking different approaches, and I thought
Here's the thing. It's almost like in certain parts of this album, they're trying to be King Crimson, and they're not King Crimson.
And they're not good at it.
And even in the beginning of the Ancient, I feel there's times they're trying to be a little Gentle Giantish, and it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Other than Ken, is there anybody here that thinks even the good songs on this are as good as Yes Classic?
No.
No, right?
Not at all.
I see a lot of guys on his post saying that it's their favorite album. I'm
Like
like
I said, the overwhelming response I got to this was masterpiece.
yeah, I saw that.
Yeah,
I was like,
you're right.
Now, Paul Sears, drummer from the Muffins, his comment was, "Zzz."
Yeah.
Put him to sleep. Eric, did this album put you to sleep?
No, it didn't put me to sleep. And I'm sitting here after everyone's talk trying to think of what can I add to this. I liked what George said about they wanted to write epics, and maybe a 20-minute song should have been an 8-minute song. Chad, I think, said, or Pete said, there's certain parts of every song that are great. I mean, what Yes was great at is stuff like Heart of the Sunrise, Going for the One. They could write complex music, but it was catchy and it caught your ear. And when I listened to this, Chad, you mentioned Revealing Science of God, the da-na-na. There's maybe, but they didn't take that and go, all of a sudden that'll drop off and it goes away. It's like, take the good stuff and either extend it or add to it.
Yeah, that's what I meant by there's so much potential here, and it just
right.
It's almost frustrating.
It's almost as if they were trying to write a symphony, like a classical piece of music.
But I think, like George said, if they went in with the intent, we're, whatever, we have 60 minutes, we don't want to shorten it, so we're going to extend it. You've already shot yourself in the foot because it's not there. You're find a couple other things, but, and I had said at the beginning of the show, if Wakeman said knock it down to 60, I say knock it down to 35 or 40. And then maybe you have something great, even if it is 2 full sides. But I feel like I agree with everyone. The Ancient, I mean, I'm sitting here going, is this the same guy that did the pedal steel in A You and I mean, even the intonation sounds shitty. It's Steve Howe. I don't know. I mean, that's just my ear. Maybe I'm hearing something wrong, but
you're not. The guy's sharp and flat randomly.
Yeah, I agree, Lou. But I don't want to say it because then someone will say you don't know what you're talking about. But I'm like, it doesn't even sound in tune to me sometimes.
And it's out of tune.
Thank you.
But like,
it even ends that solo, that jagged solo with an out of tune.
But in the same piece of music, he plays this beautiful classical guitar.
Yeah, there's some nice acoustic guitar, like the 12-minute mark.
Yeah, it's like
the same guy. Is great.
Yeah.
It's a really nice piece.
I think
maybe he was less high when he did the acoustic part.
Well, he's always done great acoustic stuff. But I think everyone has said it best. There's too much padding. What is good is either not expanded upon, or Chad said it rounds off. Like it doesn't go from here to here. It goes from here to here. And,
Chad mentioned the whole transition thing. I think a lot of the album just doesn't transition. That's the great thing about Close to the Edge is like they took all these different parts, put them together, and it sounds like they just went to the studio, knocked it all out 20 straight minutes. But here you can tell it kind of the way things go from piece to piece, part to part. It's just like sometimes it just doesn't make sense.
Somehow we're close to the edge because to me in the piece, they're very disparate pieces, but somehow they came up with the glue to transition from one to the other. And they did it in a way, I'm not sure I'd call it seamless, but in a way that it's just memorable, Here,
this doesn't have that.
The transitions, they kind of get a little boring,
Yeah, and that's exactly what I meant by rounded off and the lack of punch. There's even there's a transition in Ritual. They where the heck is they? They're I guess it's the first time they do Nous sommes du soleil, and all of a sudden they go into another part. It's like they spliced it from a session from 3 weeks ago. It just falls into this other thing, and it doesn't. It's pretty distracting actually if you know where it is. It's not good at all, and
So
I mean, it's not a huge mar on that song base, compared to the drum thing. But if you know where it is, it's like, ooh, that's rough. That's really not pleasant to listen to.
so Eric, is it in your sell pile?
I'm sorry?
Is the album in your sell pile?
No, no, I wouldn't. I think Pete said he hadn't listened to it in a decade, and I tried to think the same thing when you gave us the assignment. I'm like, when's the last time I brought this out? But no, I don't. I won't sell it. It'll stay there. Might be more of a piece than anything else, but it's a keeper.
It's funny because I was always like my friends. It's like, this is a masterpiece, but I hadn't listened to it in so long. And now you go back and listen to it, and yeah, maybe it's kind of tough to sit and listen to this all in one. You know?
Yeah.
Well, and now for something completely different.
Okay.
Louis, have you ever heard this album?
Yes, I've heard it. And thanks to you, I had to hear it again a few more times.
Yeah.
So I thought we were friends.
Well,
Just start with that. Also, I'm sorry I was late. I
Oh.
forgot there's an hour extra difference between Chicago and Mexico City. So my bad.
tough love. Tough love.
Anyway, look, I'm not gonna. Here's what I will say. Just about the best thing about this record is the artwork. The artwork is pretty good. I find that, like Pete and others have said, the very first song has got the best little bits in general. But to me, what I really, really hate about this record is that these guys apparently all had some kind of drug-induced lobotomy and forgot how to write memorable melodies. They did. They also violated the Tony Montana Scarface rule, which is never get high in your own supply. And by this point in their career, these guys decided all they had to do to be great was show up. And that's what they did. They just showed up without anything really written out. And they just expected that whatever they did would be brilliant. And that was not the case at all. There's a reason why Wakeman left after this record. There's a reason why this record is I truly believe this record was the linchpin to the whole prog is crap mentality of the 70s. It's indefensible. And moreover, what I really dislike about it is that it was a success because of the yes fan phenomenon, which essentially amounts to this. And I've said this in the past, and I'm going to say it again, and some people are going to be mad, but there are zero fucks given. The true yes fan is more than happy to buy roadkill if it has a yes logo stamped on it. And this is the reason why they have produced so many mediocre albums, even though they have clearly the potential of making great music. Because people will hear a fucking endless turd like this and call it a masterpiece. Even though the lyrics, I mean, we were talking last week about some of the lyrics in the UK Danger Money as being ridiculous. This is the gold winner for that. And on top of that, you have Chris Squire in your band, you have Rick Wakeman, and somehow you kind of mayung them in the arrangements and in the mix. What the fuck? It makes no sense to me at all. I think Pete is right. I think that it is Howe's and Anderson's album, but that does the band and the public no favors. I am hard-pressed to remember anything that I really can say, oh, this is great, except for little snippets. I don't know who produced this record. Yeah. I mean, that's what the album says.
It was
But,
the opera.
but what was he asleep? was, I mean, it's the same guy who was there for Close to the Edge, right?
Yeah, and I feel it doesn't sound anything like
yes, and Eddie.
Exactly. And look, composition is something you cannot fake. If you listen to Close to the Edge, which in my opinion is a masterpiece, an absolute fucking masterpiece, then you hear this and you're wondering, this may be the first Franken Prog album ever made. And on top of that, you know, it happens in 1973, where you have Dark Side of the Moon, you have Quadrophenia, you have Lark's Tongues in Aspic, etc., etc., etc. But because it's Yes, and because they have songs where they mention the word sunlight or sun in every fucking language, and there's all this hippie, new age horseshit going on, then everybody thinks if I'm high and if I am cool, then I must love this because it's Yes. And
Luis,
that's what happened.
Luis, do you like that each song has two titles?
Yes, because it wasn't pretentious enough with one. So you need to double down and throw in an extra, of course. And look, to me, what's been more frustrating is that regardless of my opinion of John Anderson, which is well documented, every other guy in that band is a top musician. So to me, it really is, I don't know why they would allow that to go out through the front door.
Luis, let me ask you a question. So you're a fan of Close to the Edge.
Yes, I am.
You're a fan of Relayer.
Actually, I wanted to ask you a question before you ask me yours, because I wanted to mention this. I noticed that in the lyrics, they talk about Relayer a lot.
Well, that's one. Yeah, that's
to remember.
Okay, go ahead.
So what I was going to say was, here we have this great Close to the Edge, and we have this great Relayer, and in the middle, we have Tales from Topographic Oceans, which, by your standards, they fall on their faces. So whose fault is it? The only difference is Wakeman's out and Mraz is in. So is it Wakeman's fault? Whose fault is it?
No, I think that if you're in a band and you don't have a single composer, you're not the Who, where there's a guy writing all the material, then it's everybody's fault if you don't sit there and actually write. I mean, Rick Wakeman wasn't interested in the material. That is clear. And he left for that reason. I would find it extraordinarily excruciating to be in a studio listening to this and watching my bandmates think that they're great while noodling, while playing out of tune. Eric is right. I know people are going to hate me for this. I don't give a shit. That guitar is out of tune. It's out of tune. You don't need to be a musician to tell. It's just that because it's Steve Howe and because it's Yes, you must like it. And I will like it and I will defend it. And I'm saying, no. I don't understand why this record is so popular. I think the fact that it's so long and the lyrics are so meaningless and people just loved Yes that much at that time, they just wanted to love it. And they proved the point. Once you get that critical mass, you can literally do anything and people will find something good to say about it.
Yeah, it rode that wave of Close to the Edge and Yes songs as well.
But to me, you know, I mean, 1973, Passion Play, masterpiece. Everything works in that album. But you compare it to this, I mean, the arrangements are poor. It is Franken Prog of the worst kind. It's actually fucking boring. I mean, it was a chore, Ken, my friend, to listen to this record.
There is no poem in the middle, thankfully.
Then I went ahead and I listened to the Steve Wilson remix because I thought, all right, maybe this guy can find some hidden tracks that were zeroed out or whatever. Maybe he can do something cool. I don't know. And he couldn't. I think the only thing he did is he lowered the volume of Chris Squire in one song, which to me is like, you know, that's the guy who's rocking the most. And he's not really rocking, but he's kind of trying to do something. I believe this is the only record where he actually plays with an Ottawa filter in one of these songs. I think is it the Ancient? I forget, but there's a little bit of bass wah in one of the tracks. Like you said, Ken, they are trying different things. And that is what they should be doing. But just because you're different doesn't mean that you were successful in your experiment.
And so literally the only thing you liked about this album was the artwork.
Yeah, that's the best. Is the thing I like the most. I like that little bit of acoustic guitar that Howe does in The Ancient very much. I like the Chris Squire bass solo, pretty awesome. I gotta say, I don't really care for the those drum solos and those percussions. I mean, everybody knows in a concert a drum solo, unless your name is Neil Peart, is a piss break. That's what happens. So I mean, I just don't get it. We even mentioned this when we talked about that Kansas album, and there was a little I heard drum thing, and people were furious that we mentioned that those drums didn't really add anything to it. I expect the Yes fans are going to hate me even more than ever, but the reality is that this is a band that has proven they can write great stuff, and they've also proven that they can write shit and not be able to tell the difference. This is actually a mystery to me. And this is what we get in this record.
Yeah, I said, why should we go out on a high note? You know, let's get Luis to go last.
Well,
why should we go out on a positive note? You know,
well, here's the positive. Regardless of my opinion, all these guys still love it just as much, and they can still light up and get high and enjoy it. And that's the beautiful part about music. The taste is subjective. Musicianship is not. And Yes is a band of high musicianship. Composition is not. And in this particular album, as was been mentioned by everybody, I think we can agree that if people who like Yes, like authentically like Yes, are saying, maybe we should have made a single record. If we had just like trimmed and trimmed and trimmed and trimmed the fat, it would have been better. These are indications that the record is not great. And that's not to say that Yes are not great. That's just to say that this particular record is a very poor example of Yes. And it really irritates me that people just praise it so much, because if they said that about Relay or Close to the Edge, yeah, that makes sense to me, of course. But this, I've never understood it. And I've talked about this with many people. I've heard people. I never heard Tom say what he said, because I would have cuffed him in the head. But I did hear other musicians say these things, and I am always flabbergasted. Like I don't know what record they're hearing. I even once asked the guy at Orion, "Hey, let me borrow your CD. I just want to see if your CD is somehow different from mine, because the one that I have is terrible." And sure enough,
yeah, yours was made in Mexico. I mean,
no, I bought mine in Maryland, and then I went back to C Depot and I sold it. So as of now, I don't own it. That's why I had to go to YouTube and listen there, and I was able to listen to the Steven Wilson remixes, hoping, because that man has a great ear and he can really bring out some good stuff. Right? He's done that. The Jethro Tull things he's done are incredible. So I thought, well, maybe he can do it here, But I just
You're just a hater, man.
Yeah, I'm just a hater, man.
You don't understand.
I really have no love for this record at all, and it irritates me that it's so well loved.
But isn't that interesting that it's so well loved?
I think I've offered my explanation. I think people just couldn't. They heard it, and rather than say, "Oh my God, this sucks," they said, "Oh, I just don't get it. I must play it again. I need another joint, and I must hear it again."
Maybe part of the appeal is you don't get it, and maybe you want to get it, and and you're trying to get it.
Look, I hadn't thought of it like that. That there is something joyous about that, right? That's fine. If it's a little game you play, that's okay, right? But for people who actually do this for a living, to listen to it and not realize, oh my God, this fucking thing never ends. And then I really have trouble picking out bits of songs, like remembering. Like I can't remember the remembering. I can't do it. And I there are little pieces that are like kind of cool, where they sort of come alive, they do some cool things. And they don't even have to be upbeat and high tempo and energetic. It can be a more Anderson-like moment of angel-like posing. But to me, actually, this record is very much like what happened when I first saw Yes live. And John Anderson came out all dressed in white. They did that song the circus of whatever. It's really boring. And they open with this in Virginia. And then when they finish, he's standing there like this, looking around, and people are clapping. It's the first song. But in his opinion, there wasn't enough applause. So when it started to die down, he asked for more. I think that attitude was present way back. I think that they thought they were making some kind of glorious masterpiece. And I think they just broke the Tony Montana rule. They got high on their own supply. They believed their own hype. And that is very dangerous when you're an artist, because then you have no more quality control. And if all your fans tell you all you do is great, then it's a very bad place to be. That's why I respect people like David Bowie, who would always change it up. They were always finding new things. It's hard for me to understand. Although I do see the joy that this record brings to people. And I don't want to ruin it for them. I'm not here to tell you guys you're wrong.
Too late. Too late.
Yeah,
I despise this record. I despise it.
Luis, you put the Whamma Jamma on it.
Yeah.
We're going to sell our copies.
Louis,
So,
you and I need
yes.
to put our hands together and open our eyes and ears and hearts open to the
Can
music.
you imagine an encounter between me and that guy? I've never met him. I don't know. I have no ill will toward this human. I don't know him, right? I just react viscerally
You will
to that shit.
understand.
And to his stage persona and his banter and all that other stuff, which really irritates the shit out of me. So I will just say, these are several hours of my life I will never get back. Thank you, Ken. I am now more sure than ever that this record is absolutely a ponderous dinosaur-like turd that I don't need to ever listen to again.
Luis, I am sure you have been subconsciously enlightened by the lyrics. You just don't know it yet.
Yes, of course I have. Allow me to see. I was writing some stuff down, but I don't. No, I erased it. Yeah, I erased it. I couldn't do it. I tried. I was trying to write down the lyrics and try to. I thought I would read them out, and then I thought I can't do it. Like I would start reading them, and I just had to stop. So
Pete, it's going to be another 10 years for you?
I don't know. Maybe not that long, but I don't know. All right, I'm going to read just a little bit. All right, the very beginning of the album. Dawn of light lying between a silence and souled sources. Chased amid fusions of wonder in moments hardly seen forgotten. Colored in pastures of chance dancing, leaves cast spells of challenge. Amused but real in thought, we fled from the sea whole. Dawn of thought transferred through moments of days under searching earth, revealing corridors of time, provoking memories, disjointed but with purpose. Whatever.
Disjointed but with purpose makes a lot of sense, though.
yeah, but this is like some undergraduate pretentious twat writing, some word salad. And again, we have had this discussion before. I know you guys don't see this the way I do, but the music, whether we agree that it was poorly composed in the transitions and in the arrangements and the pretension required to make a 5-minute song a 21-minute song, there are still some good moments and good ideas that could have been produced and done well. But if you have this great seeds of music and you have these words, that just doesn't do you any favors. It's just it makes it impossible for a guy like me to take it seriously. This is what you're singing, because it doesn't even make sense. I don't know what the fuck you're saying, and I don't think they do either. That's the thing about it. There is a brazenness about it. I will just write whatever. It's like that Dali era where he would just like do whatever and sell it for a bunch of money, and he knew it was shit, but people would buy it because it was Dali. So okay, fine. They were riding that hog. They were high on that crest of that wave. Good for them. But this record is not a good example of what they could do. And thankfully, Moraz came in and they had lost a very powerful weapon, and maybe they felt, oh shit, well, I guess we got to do something good. And out came Relayer. Fucking A. That's a great record. But no.
For me, like,
wonder
one of my favorite parts of this song.
I wonder if any of Relayer was leftovers from Tales of Topographic Oceans.
Doesn't sound like it.
Well, there are little bits here and there. There's a couple bits in Ritual that remind me of Gates of Delirium and even some hints towards Awaken. But they're small. They're little fleeting moments. Like, oh, that sounds like a vocal part of Gates of Delirium. So
somebody in the comments is going to tell us how wrong we all are.
Oh, of course they are.
More than one.
More than one is right. Probably about
They're
400.
gonna call for my head, and that's fine too. But the reality is still, I would like anybody to genuinely tell me how in the hell they can compare anything on this record to the really classic Yes moments and some of their other 70s albums. Some of the stuff on Drama is a kick-ass album. It's not pretentious. It doesn't have lyrics about the fucking sun. It doesn't do all this stuff. And it's a good rock album, and it has great music. And somehow, as if by magic, Steve Howe doesn't sound like he just threw his guitar into a bathtub of acid before he recorded. So there is an important thing to learn that. I think nobody's questioning the man's ability, but I am questioning their ability to discern whether what they just recorded was good or bad. That's why some artists really need a producer, so they can coax the best stuff out of them. Because these guys may be having some kind of weird vision about what they're doing, and they need to be reeled back into planet Earth and have the music carved out and shaped. It's still them. It's still their creativity, but it's not fully their vision. And I think that allowing John Anderson and Steve Howe to have their vision in this record was a disservice to the name Yes. It was a disservice to music. They were in a different wavelength from where they were before and Close to the Edge. With also, let's not forget, Close to the Edge benefits immensely from Bill Bruford. I'm not knocking Alan White, but there is a big change in philosophy, in attitude, in completely different drummers. And I've said this before in this program, a band is only as good as the drummer. So they were learning how to play with a new drummer while simultaneously being as fluffy and as new age and as bullshitty as possible. Not a good combo, in my opinion.
Well, this record sold like crazy. I think it charted really high. I think it went to maybe number 6 in the U.S. charts.
Hold on, I'll tell you in a second.
Gold on both sides of the ocean.
Right?
Number 6, number 1 in the UK.
Yeah, they were an incredibly popular band. Weren't they playing like stadiums or very large venues?
The stadiums came on the second part of the Relayer tour.
Okay,
so they
were on the rise, correct?
When they were doing their solo albums, actually, when they were playing stadiums, they're playing outdoor stadiums headlining.
Now I got a boot from that tour, and they're only doing Ritual at that point. None of the other ones.
Yeah. I think with Moraz, that was the only tune they did from Tales.
Yeah, poor Moraz. Imagine. All right,
that ended up on Yes shows, right? Yeah.
Yep.
That's good.
Yeah. It's a shame that the record did as well as it did, because let me ask a hypothetical question. Imagine it had flopped. Then what happens? Well, I mean, is Relayer going to be even better? It's hard to imagine.
Why do you think there would have been a Relayer if it would have flopped?
Well, I mean, maybe they still had one more record on their contract, so they had to do something, and then they had something to prove. All of a sudden, you guys have to be hungry again.
There's
And
one key thing, Luis, that you're forgetting. In between Wakeman and Mraz was Vangelis. So there was another keyboard player in there. So
Wait, that was
they couldn't
that was
handle him.
before more. That was before Moraz. I thought it was after.
No,
Right before.
before.
Was it? Okay.
And they said he walked in, he was playing drums, he was playing keyboards, and they were just overwhelmed by him. They didn't. They're like, what the fuck are we going to do with this guy? He's too much for us. And in fact, Mraz recorded Relayer with Vangelis's keyboards because he brought his keyboards in,
Left them all there. Yeah.
and he left them all there. And Mraz recorded with Vangelis's keyboards.
Pretty crazy when you think about it.
Yeah.
I mean, here's
I
the
love
thing.
a layer without any hesitation, but this one, no.
For everybody
Just like
watching, we
I
have
don't care how important it was. I just don't fucking like it. It's true.
All right, Louis, calm down. Calm down.
Can't stop.
Louis, you're not getting any younger. Calm down.
No. I mean, here's the thing. We have a bunch of Yes fans here. So for everybody watching who, is like, I can't believe that everybody doesn't love this album. I would challenge any Yes fan to give this album another listen and really think about everything we talked about today. A bunch of us mentioned a lot of good things about this album. We all find it's got a lot of faults. So to us, it's not really a classic, but I think if you really stop and think about this album from start to finish, everything in between, really think about why it is the classic that people think it is compared to other albums that are in this catalog that probably deserve to be called classics a little bit above Tales from Topographic Oceans. Good stuff on there for sure. And one of the most controversial albums in this genre for a reason, I think. I think we kind of talked about all those reasons today. So
I'll bet there's people on that thread that Ken posted the other day that will tell you that Topographic is better than Relayer. Guaranteed.
I'm sure. I've heard people say that to me, which to me is mind-boggling.
For me, the high points of this record are extraordinarily high. So it does, it's kind of frustrating.
Well, then it's would it be fair to say this is like a lap dance? Yes's lap dance album. It's just a gigantic tease that goes nowhere.
No happy ending.
No, nothing. Yeah, it's just it's a mirage. You see little things. There's a promise of something great, but then it's gone, and so is your money.
Maybe.
Anyway.
I enjoy that, but a good lap dance, man.
I'm not going to knock the lap dance.
I mean, I wouldn't know, but this is what George tells me. So
I think it's a good choice, though. I mean, obviously we a lot of spirited conversation here, and yeah, it will forever remain a controversial album in the Yes catalog, for sure. So I'm really interested to see what the comments are going to look like once this airs. So
that's why we did it, right?
That's exactly why we did it. So we fully understand. And guys, remember, there's no right or wrong answer. If you think this is the greatest album ever recorded, that's fine. If you find more hatred towards this album than even Lewis, that's fine too. But it'd be really interesting to see how many people are kind of like in the middle, which it seemed like a lot of us were, that there are moments of brilliance on here, but also, confounding moments of just meandering that, to make this double album. That's kind of where I'm at. I think almost everybody is in the same place. So we love Yes. Maybe we just don't love this album all that much. We like parts of it, and that's okay. So let us know down in the comments below, and visit us on the web at www.seaoftranquility.org. We're on Facebook. We're on YouTube all together. All the damn time. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and click on that notification bell so you get alert of all of our content as it posts. And please do hit the like button before you leave. We'll see you back here in 2 weeks here on In the Prog Seat for more Prog Mayhem. For Eric Porter, Louis Nasser, Ken Golden, George Lemie, and Chad Hutchinson, I am Pete Pardo. Good night, everybody. See you in 2 weeks. Take care.